While millions of Nigerians were in the mood of celebrating Nigeria's 58th independence anniversary on Monday, October the 1st, a strange geological occurrence caused an eruption of fire and some substances from the earth around KATAMPE, ABUJA. Naturally, the incident caused panic in the area, and this is coming barely a month after earth tremors occurred in Mpape. However, unlike a volcano that happens on mountains, this eruption occurred at a valley from which substances were emitted, and a crack appeared on the surface, some way off from the eruption. The eruption, which occurred underneath an electric pole, left residents apprehensive as several people trooped to the scene to take a look at what was going on. What is responsible for this occurrence? How safe are residents living there? Why the increasing threats of natural disasters, and how can we fight or mitigate them? These and other questions my guests will be giving insight to on the program. In a moment, welcome to Nigeria Today. I am Dennis Adigunloye. With me in the studio to speak on the issue of a volcanic-like eruption scare is Professor Charles Ofuegbu. He is a professor of geophysics. Professor, thanks for joining us on Nigeria Today.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
It's a pleasure.
Now, let's take off with this issue of volcanic eruptions. Surely what we've witnessed in KATAMPE in the FCT cannot be compared with what we've been hearing in Indonesia, for example, with a major volcanic eruption in which over 1,000 lives were lost. So how can you draw parallels between that incident and what we've seen here locally? Actually,
the haste with which people were beginning to compare what happened, what they experienced in FCT, you know, I call it FCT, Mpape and KATAMPE, with what is going on in Indonesia. With what is going on in Indonesia, what happened in Indonesia repeatedly, and then in places like Hawaii, and the like, you know, I think the haste was too much. Yep. And we've never known the area in question to have any to have volcanic activity. Yeah. We've also never known the area to be prone to any geological process, any geological activity that will indicate the existence of any volcano, be it dormant or be it active or be it buried. Volcanoes don't just occur. Volcanic eruptions don't just occur. There is science for volcanic eruptions, and people who already know the places where you have the dormant volcanoes in the world, will know where you have the active volcanoes in the world, and when they do occur, this process is very clear. Mind you, what is happening at Mpape is making so much news because it's within the FCT, or within the immediate vicinity of the FCT, or within the FCT, as I would say. The similar something also happened at Nnewi in Anambra State, where you have these fissures, and then you have the smell, the substances, and people were complaining. You know, so we visited the place. We got to the place. We knew that that was on a lignite belt. It was a major lignite belt that runs from the Niger towards the Niger, and then runs across Nnewi through Ekusugo local government, Nnewi down, further down. So part of it was exposed and heated up, and then internally caught. Let me say, use the word the common man will understand. Caught fire, and then you could see the flame, you could see the heat, you could see the materials coming up. And the smell, the smell as it's exposed, as the material is exposed to weather, exposed to water, exposed to the environment, you have the obnoxious smell and fire also. And then of course you saw the crack, you can see the crack. Generally when you have something like this, you heat it up and there's any generation of heat in it, the tendency is for it to crack. And then you have that crack generate. People were beginning to ask the day we visited it, because I'm the chairman of the committee on mineral resources and environmental management for the state. And when my committee went to the place, they were saying that there's a volcano. They never knew there was a volcano. So we had to calm them down and tell them this is not just it. It doesn't just happen. So what this conclusion, this parallel being drawn, I think is very hasty.
It's hasty.
I think
a bit of an exaggeration.
It's a bit of exaggeration, and I don't think, as geoscientists, we accept that exaggeration.
Okay, as a geoscientist, you talk about active and non-active volcanoes. What are the critical factors required for a volcano itself to erupt? What chain of events need to take place for an eruption?
Well, for a volcano to erupt, some volcanoes you can predict when they will erupt. It's predictable that this volcano is expected that it will erupt again every 20 years. When the internal processes take place, and then you have heating up magma, the movement of magma, and of course when this magma heats up, and then it has to, of course, release the energy and release itself, and by so doing it evolves and then releases the lava, which now flows down. And most times they tend to coincide with mountains.
Yes.
High mountains, well elevated places, volcanic mountains, and then they flow down, and unfortunately people tend to live down, and there are also places of tourism that are very attractive as far as tourism is concerned. And when this comes down, it could overflow homes, it could kill, and then the death tolls rise, and people evacuation may be slower than expected, or it could happen suddenly too in the night when people are sleeping. The eruption like in Indonesia, a lot of people died because the speed at which the events took place far outweighed the
time for response.
The same thing happened in Hawaii too. Yeah. And Hawaii is more serious because it's just by the coast. And you see this lava going in, and as soon as it's going into the sea, the sea chills it up, and then it comes into a mold. The cleanup may take years.
Okay. Well, you were talking about the reaction times. The volcanoes, they usually occur on mountains. And what we saw in Katampé was at a valley. So that's further evidence that it's not really, it cannot be.
Yes, I think most of us it cannot be. What we're beginning to think is that you have something similar to what happened at Nnewi, where you have, I think that's what we're beginning to think. Okay. And remember, these are areas where we have a lot of quarrying, and blasting of stones taking place. All these are sufficient to also destabilize an originally stable environment and lead to fissures being formed, and then the heat of materials.
What we've been seeing in Mpape and Katampe areas, is that the type of environment where you would say the necessary requirements for a volcano to occur?
From our knowledge of geology of Africa, geology of Nigeria, particularly geology of Abuja, I do not believe so.
Okay. Because when we talk about
in fact, I have people talk about having played boundaries, played boundaries in Mpape, and having a boundary between basement and the sedimentary basin at Mpape, and that leading to the tremor or massive earthquake, as the massive earthquake, what happened, the tremor or that. As far as we are concerned, from geology of Nigeria, very known geology of Nigeria, geology of Abuja, there is no boundary between, there's no basement sedimentary basin boundary at Mpape. The one closest to Abuja is somewhere around Abaji.
Right. And this
such boundary does not even indicate, it does not in any way suggest seismicity. Okay.
The eruption that's occurred at Katampe had this side of glassy rock type of material that is being subjected to testing.
Yes.
That eruption, that particular material, is it similar to what we would see in a volcanic eruption?
Well, volcanic eruption tends to end up, yes, you have some minerals actually being being thrown out also in the course of eruptions. Then you have the ash, the lava ash. The lava, when it cools, becomes an ash, becomes a lava ash and other. But I think at the end of the test, let's wait for the results of the test to be done. Luckily now we have laboratories in Nigeria that can give us reasonably good test results. Let's wait. We tend to be in let's wait a bit and get all these results, and we'll put them all together, and then we'll come up with a conclusion, decision and discussion. But we will get very alarmist. One will mislead people, will make people to get restless, and I don't think that should be the case.
That is certainly not the way to go in terms of allaying the fears of...
yes, that's not the way, yes.
Yeah. In terms of man's own impact or actions or activities, could they have led to what we witnessed in KATAMPE?
Well, yes, man's, just like we talk of tremors, so have man-made hazards, man-made geological hazards. Yeah. The activities of man also contributes both to tremors and to this kind of fissures being created. When you have unregulated detonation of explosive mining activities and then underground mining, illegal mining and so on, that could in itself also create problems.
This mining activity in that area, do you think to a certain degree, or to what degree do you think it is impacting on what we're witnessing in terms of environmental issues and challenges in that area?
Yes, it could impact considerably on the environmental area. Okay. Particularly, one that concerns me is quarrying. Quarrying. Yeah. In the ABUJA area, the area is also the quarrying activity that is taking place. And this quarrying, ABUJA itself, you have all these granites, all this granite, and then they use explosives for them. And each time, that is explosion, actually in itself leads to tremors. Okay. You have tremors that arise as a consequence of explosion, nuclear explosion, and any other nuclear explosions actually give one measure of knowing when there's a nuclear explosion. Like if North Korea, when North Korea detonates a nuclear device, almost all the stations, monitoring stations, pick it up as signals. But we do have how we distinguish also in geophysics. You could distinguish from analysis, distinguish seismicity arising from a nuclear explosion and that arising from a normal deep-seated earthquake.
Okay. In terms of the tests that have been done on these materials that came out of the earth, what kind of time frame were we expecting to find out the results of those tests?
It shouldn't take too much. It shouldn't take too much. It's not something that should take so much time.
Right.
But what happens is that you do the first test, then you try, occasionally you use more than one laboratory.
Okay.
But we're lucky now in the country. We have the Geological Survey Agency now has facilities in Kaduna. Then you have also the one in Jos, the laboratory in Jos also that could give us reasonably good results. I don't think it's come to a point when we start thinking of going overseas like some people are already talking about.
Well, Nigeria is quite, well, for me personally, Nigeria is a country quite blessed when it comes to not being subjected to natural and environmental catastrophes that we witness in other parts of the world. What we're seeing in Mpape and other parts, would you say that belief is still germane?
I think by and large we're lucky. We're very lucky. Yeah. Imagine if the Cameroon mountains, the Cameroon Highland, was where it was supposed to be before the rotation of the plate. The rotation that took place, where we call the Benue Trough. The Benue Trough that cuts right across the entire country, right through to Yola, to Chad Basin and what have you. Well, that gave us also a bit of blessing with all the oil we have.
Okay.
If that rotation did not take place, all what we call the Cameroon line, as you see it, would have been right in the middle of this country. It would have been more serious. We're very lucky too. We have fairly stable platform. We're not one of the highly seismic zones, but everywhere you may have tremor now and then. We've had our minor tremors, particularly in Djibouti, and then you have some of the fracture zones, mid-Atlantic fracture, cutting into the country, and then towards Tamil, not actually making major impacts on the country, but we do have movements along them, and occasionally it does happen. And it was a consequence that led to so many activities of government in the 80s and the late 80s and early 90s. And for example, it was as a consequence of the activities that some of us were brought together, what was then called the National Committee of Experts on Natural Hazards, and later Committee of Experts on Earthquake Phenomenon, and then led also eventually to National Technical Committee on Earthquake Phenomenon, and has grown up even some of the agencies we have today as a consequence of the work of that committee.
All right. Well, we'll continue our discussion, but let's take a report from our correspondent. He was actually there at the time, so just let's take a look at reports from Mia Ugidi.
This densely populated residential area of the Federal Capital Territory was thrown into panic in early September this year when earth tremor occurred. The area then bid farewell to September with the crash of the Nigerian Air Force jets on rehearsal for the Independence Day celebration. 5 days later, Mpape is confronted with another natural occurrence: suspected inflammable substances emitting from the cliff of the hills.
Around 5 p.m. in the evening, we discovered that, yesterday, we discovered that smoke is coming out from the place, very whitish.
You begin to postulate a volcanic eruption because it looks very much like a rock type we call obsidian, black, glassy. You understand? But this is not the kind of environment where you see volcanic eruption. So it's until we subject it to analytical tests that we can conclusively tell you what material this is made of.
Panic was setting in as some fear it could be volcanic, which made to promptly draw the attention of the federal government.
Samples, they'll go analyze the samples. It's after that we'll be able to tell you exactly what it is. And just will urge the community not to panic, that we are on top of this matter.
Government will make sure that the lives and properties of residents is not at risk at all.
Welcome back to the program. Professor, obviously we heard some reassuring words from the Minister of the FCT and the Mines and Steels Minister. What can you say to the residents in the immediate vicinity in terms of how they should react to what has happened recently?
I think I will agree with the DG of the Geological Survey Agency, my colleague Alex Mwebu. Yeah, they have to be they calm, and they have a tendency, people tend to be alarmist, and then you have a lot of false prophets already coming up and making all kinds of statements in the newspapers. And they should remain calm. I don't think we're in where this is happening. I'm yet to be convinced geologically that it has anything to do with it, unless this is a new volcano developing in the history of man, and then we will know. That's the way some of us are looking at it. We will need to analyze the samples, find out what activities have been taking place in the place. Have there ever been a buried or a dump? Has there ever been a dump in the area? And then after the analysis, we have the chemical analysis. It's only after these materials have been analyzed, and we'll now try and see to what its affiliation it has to processes in the air, and then we can now draw a conclusion. But I think I can bet that we don't have any volcano at KATAMPE.
This is a fairly novel occurrence in Mpape and in Nigeria. People are talking about gathering some of the materials and having this false belief maybe that it has healing powers.
That's what I said. A lot of prophets would have already come up. Well, also in Asia, some of these areas also, there's some beliefs in some of these countries where you have volcanoes that the volcanic ash, and so have curative powers and so on. Just as people believe that the ash could heal wounds, do that, but they have to be very careful because the same material could also lead to death, depending on the content. What if at the end of the day we're talking about material that is highly radioactive, or we're talking about materials that is, whose chemical composition is such that it could kill? So they have to be also careful before they start drinking what is going to end up killing rather than curing them. So we also need to carry a campaign, and I think there should be some public telling the people to stay away from the place. The place should even be sealed up until investigations are completed, and then we know whether the place is safe and secured. Then you open up the place again to human activity.
Okay. We've seen in recent times the flooding that has been witnessed in the country. This kind of occurrence, we hope it doesn't exacerbate such flooding occurrences in Nigeria.
Well, I think no. This event obviously will have to do with the flooding that is taking place. Not just unique. It's not just peculiar to Nigeria. It's global. It's a part of the climatic change we're talking about. I know that some big powers, some like America, Trump's pulled out of the accord, the French accord, the Paris Accord. But that is what is happening. The consequence is there. Is climate change. The rainy seasons, like in Abuja now, is a bit more prolonged. The rivers are all over flooded. And then it's global. But it's for now in Nigeria, it's a serious matter. In Anambra State, in so many. Have you ever taken a drive through Lokoja, through Ajokuta, Lokoja, Ajokuta? By that, you can see whole entire villages all flooded up. Houses, right to the roof.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing happening in, you have it happening in different places. Part of it in America, even the hurricanes, the typhoon we are seeing in Asia, in China, and so on, is all tied to the same thing. The climate change, global warming.
Wow. Well, when all is said and done, from what I'm gathering from you, there is no cause for immediate alarm or panic on the part of residents. They should go about their daily routine.
Yes, they should go about their daily routine, but maybe stay away from
the actual.
Because if the heat is, if the place is heat, they could get hot. They could let them just stay away. That place should by now. But the civil defense should have by now sort of secluded that place and kept it off reach for inhabitants until investigations are carried out. If it becomes necessary to remedy the places, there may be remedial actions to be taken to restore it again back to normalcy. Look for people to now go about their business on that site.
All right. In your experience, obviously Nigeria is a vast plain of land. Have you witnessed this kind of thing in other parts of the country? You mentioned the Niue.
No, yes, in Anambra State, there's a recent one too in Anambra State, which we you know, but that one had to do was basically arising from the lignite belt. So we could trace the belt, we could trace where it was coming from, and we could say this is it. But work is still going on that also.
Right.
Where when we still, samples have been collected, the Anambra State government actually had a committee looking at it. Then the federal government, also the Geological Survey Agency, also visited. Luckily, the Geological Survey Agency has a geohazard directorate right there in Oka, and we had to liaise with them too.
Okay.
Yes, it's a similar. We're not concluding that it's a similar thing, but the beginning, for me, it's looking like it's something like that.
Right.
And it won't be the first time it's happened in the world that you have such fissures develop, and then you find flames and then you find smoke coming out. Okay. Mind you, this is rain, so if something is heated up and then you put water on top of it, the natural thing is that you find smoke, and most smokes that come out are usually whitish, not dark.
All right. So, what on the part of residents again? What can they do to mitigate such an occurrence from happening again? Is there anything they can do themselves, or is it entirely a national problem?
It should be treated as a serious national problem.
Yeah.
First, we want to have those sample and result of the analysis. Okay. Two, we want to look at the terrain. Scientific professional look at the terrain, the environment, find out the environment where it's occurring, find out what are the activities taking place there before, now, and present activities taking place there. And then, having done that, take a decision, a serious policy decision on should that place be off reach, or should that place off limit, or should that place become places where people still go to. Obviously, if it's as serious as it's been reported, then there shouldn't be much farming there for now, and so on.
Okay.
And people should be advised to stay away from there until the government completes its study of what has happened. And the study has to then be carried out. It's not going to be just a geochemist or that. It's not going to involve professionals.
Oh, okay. Just finally, okay. Obviously we've seen what's happened in Indonesia. Just give us how devastating the volcanic eruption can be on the masses within the immediate vicinity. Obviously, like I said, we've seen it. Just give us that.
It can be very, very devastating.
Yeah.
This is a case of imagine yourself sleeping. And suddenly, well, these days it's predicted when it's going to erupt. We pick it out in the seismic station, pick it up, you begin to see seismic activity, you see a lot of activities taking place, and then people begin to wonder what's going on. It's going to be an eruption, and people are warned either to begin to evacuate, and then there's evacuation. And then some people refuse to evacuate because they're so emotionally attached to their property, where they've been living, where they were born. And then at the end of the day, you may be asleep, and suddenly you see hot lava. Hot lava being erupting from fissures and flowing down. And because most people live downhill, not up the mountain, they live on the foot of the mountain. It just comes down,
there's no escaping it.
No escaping anymore. So the advice is, should such a thing ever happen, and then the authorities say evacuate, do evacuate, because you'll be on your own if you fail to evacuate.
Okay, but all said and done, what we've seen in KATAMPE and Mpape in recent times is not on the grand scale of...
No, it hasn't got into that. It hasn't got into that. Yes, I've heard people talk about the earthquake. Listen, an earthquake of 3 points, in the magnitude of the scale,
on the Richter scale.
4 Richter scale, would actually, all the roads leading to, all the roads in Masoko would have by now been, in Maitama, by now have all cracked, the bridges would have collapsed, and then a few houses where very important personalities and people would have given way. But then it was over dramatized, and I'm not saying that tremors are always occurring, and that they could be caused by human activity.
Main message is no cause for alarm, but carry on your daily business, but tread with caution.
Let the experts.
All right.
Let the experts work on what has happened and give advice.
Well, this is where we draw the curtain on this topic. We want to thank you, Professor Charles Ofuegbu, a professor of geophysics. Thank you for your insights. And we thank you for watching. And remember to join us tomorrow for another discussion on Nigeria Today. We air on weekdays, same time. You can also watch any edition online at www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. My name is Dennis Adigunloye. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank
you, sir.